And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players in MLS podcast. The scarf wall may be down, but the topics, they never stop. It's USMNT time on the pod. Greg Berhalter has announced his 27-man roster for the training camp heading into Copa America. We'll preview our thoughts on the inclusions, who else could have made the trip, preview the two summer friendlies, all leading up to Copa America. Then, Apple TV has just announced the US Open Cup is coming to MLS Season Pass, free to all viewers as long as you have an Apple TV subscription. We'll dive into just how impactful this is to the cup itself and why people should just stop complaining about it when something good happens, even though it has some MLS ties to it. I'm Andrew, that's Connor, and here is this week's MLS news. Long time no chat, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. I brought my question for you today. Are you ready for
I
it?
am ready for it. I was
Okay,
hoping you
I'm
did.
not going to ask you about TikTok dances this time.
Good.
I want to know how far you think you can kick a beach volleyball. And I'm not talking one of the hard ones. I want like the one that you fill up with air. How far do you think you can kick that?
Like now, how far can I kick it? And is it off the ground or is it in my hands?
You got to off the hands, real
So like a
NFL
punt.
style, like you're punting it. Yeah.
So punting it.
Yeah.
If I hit a football, like a soccer ball football properly, I can hit it. I can hit it past half. If I hit an American football, I hit that probably a good 30, 40 yards. I'd say the beach ball or the beach volleyball is probably going to go 25, 30 yards.
That's
Like in the air, or does it like roll out?
I'll count the roll.
Oh, then I can probably get, yeah, I'd probably get it the same amount on the roll I would kick a soccer ball in the air.
Wow. All right, we got that on record. Next time we go to the beach, we're testing it out.
I haven't been to a beach in like 6 years.
Well, you're going to South Carolina. There's beaches down there. So you go to the beach,
I'm inland.
record it. That's fine. You could drive, go drive to the beach, and then go kick a volleyball.
Well, no, I'm kicking it on a soccer field because there's no rollout in the sand. It's just gonna die.
Fine. Whatever. Question's over.
What about
Day's
you?
ruined.
How far are you kicking it? I've seen you kick a ball. I'm gonna go plus or minus zero
It's
yards.
gonna go nowhere.
I was
I'm a
say it's
tennis player. When do I ever have to
you're
kick
gonna
it?
swing and miss.
I'm not gonna swing and miss, but I'm not gonna kick it very far.
I don't know, man. I've seen you try and kick a ball. Swing and miss is definitely on the table for you.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that one. I got good hand-eye coordination, although I guess this is foot-eye coordination.
Exactly. It's a completely different game. You know what else is a completely different game? My scarf game. I know you can't tell because I don't have the wall up anymore, which is heartbreaking. It's such a boring background. But
It
now I'm
is.
like you. I'm down to your level. You should feel good about it. Tell me about your scarf today.
Well, I don't have a USMNT scarf, even though we're
Fraud.
talking about the USMNT. So I'm bringing out a scarf for our Lord and Savior in this team, bringing tears to many people's eyes. So I've brought out the Nashville scarf.
Man, just imagine his teammate came too. How bad Twitter would have been.
They would have probably been focused on the other people. That's why like Miles Robinson didn't get a lot of slack, I think.
Because I'm not a fraud, have my United States, but it doubles because it is Copa America.
Is
So
that an old scarf?
yeah, from the last time it was on American soil, the Centenario, 100th edition.
That's so fitting.
Yeah, yeah. So I bought it on sale after the Copa America at Modell's when it was closing.
Oh man.
Good old
R.I.P.
Modell's.
Models.
God, Modell's.
Models was the place to go, man.
Some of the greatest people work there. Shout out to my boy Jared Jacobson, who's going to be sending us clips. I think he was at the Toronto FC Cincinnati game last night,
That was quite the game.
which was insane. But he said that he's going to send some in, so I'll bump him for it. We'll post it probably next week's episodes. But outside of that, let's dive into the topic of the day. We'll do the big one. We'll do the USMNT. It's going to take most of our time. The USMNT and Greg Berhalter have called in 27 players for a training camp and two friendlies against some pretty strong South American sides in Colombia and Brazil. This is the team's final tune-up before Copa America. And instead of focusing on the excitement of seeing guys like Tyler Adams and Josh Sargent back in the fold, Twitter is back running amok over 4 MLS editions, 3 of which are likely never going to see the pitch because that's just what we do. Completely ignoring the fact that the Olympics played such a heavy role in the few roster spots being available to who they are, discourse is always slanted heavily towards the negative instead of the positive, especially when it comes to MLS players. We've covered this before, but let's dive into the roster and highlight what all the hubbub is about, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk surprise inclusions first. And I'm going to put that in quotes because some of them are surprises, some of them are not. 4 big talking points: Sean Johnson, Miles Robinson, Shaq Moore, and Tim Tillman. We'll go through them one by one, and I'll ask you your thoughts first, and then I'll give you mine. Sean Johnson, give me your thoughts on him being included.
So I know that was one of the players that you had mentioned. It was destroying people. Like, I don't think they were physically able to wake up that morning after they found out Sean Johnson was on the team. Even though he's a third string, and if he's seeing the field, things have gone disastrously wrong. Like, maybe not Miazga, Matt Turner and Ethan Horvath must have like crashed into each other on bikes or something if Sean Johnson's playing. So I don't get that at all. I don't know why we're crying about Sean Johnson being here. I think people are forgetting the fact that I believe the Olympics is coming up around that same time too. So you're not going to see them bring on a guy like Gaga Slanina, who's probably set in to be the starter in the Olympics, because you'd rather him playing, even if it's against lower level competition, versus him just sitting in the third goalkeeper spot where he's just going to be training with the team and then not playing at all. So I got no problems with them bringing in Sean Johnson, mainly because I don't think he's going to play at all. And he's just a guy that's been around the team consistently. And I think for Copa America, you want to bring in guys that are experienced. I don't think that's the time where you bring in someone new to experiment. That's where you bring in, that's for friendlies. That's for maybe some other lesser, like, big competitions, but Copa America is a huge one. Like, this is our biggest competition before the World Cup comes in 2026. So I think you want to bring in people that know the system, that are experienced. And I think Sean Johnson will do that into the training sessions. And I think you only asked about Sean right now, right?
Yeah, but I also want to point out this is how you know Connor doesn't listen to me, because he goes, I think the Olympics are coming up, even though in my intro I clearly said that the Olympics played a heavy role in the last few roster spots. So, it's not
Yeah, I
like,
totally glossed over that one.
yeah, like I don't even know why I do the intros anymore, because it doesn't. It's good for the listeners, but it doesn't set my co-host up to give
I need less
positive
words.
discourse.
Less words. It's too many words.
Why use many words when few words do trick, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? It makes sense. Accountants think that way, right? Kevin from The Office, you, Matt.
I only
You guys
work
don't
with
like.
numbers.
Yeah, you guys don't like too many words. You're lazy.
Explain it to me in numbers and I'll understand and I'll listen.
Well, here's the number, and the number's 3. Sean Johnson's the third goalkeeper. Like, calm down, people. It doesn't feel like I'm not thrilled Sean Johnson's here, right? I would have loved to see anybody else in there, but again, because of the Olympics, guys like Gaga Slanina and Patrick Schulte, they're not going to be available. You might have been able to throw Drake Callender in there, but end of the day, it's the third goalkeeper, like you mentioned. Who's gonna, if he ends up playing, we're in these two or in the Copa, we're in a bad spot, right? Something has gone drastically wrong. And if you get down to the third GK, he's not the worst person to have. He's a great shot stopper. He does really well with the group in front of him. He commands his box well. He's not number 1. Let's move on, right? Let's move
plus,
on.
like, I feel like with the third goalkeeper spot, you're not necessarily looking for, you may not necessarily be looking for the third best in the pool, but maybe just a guy that's really good in practice. And maybe that is Sean Johnson. Like, Sean, like you said, Sean Johnson's not the first name I'd want to see on the third goalkeeper spot. Like, I think there's a bunch of really like up and coming MLS goalkeepers that I think obviously not all of them are going to be able to make the Olympic squad, but guys like Schulte, Celentano, Chris Brady, like, odds are all 3 are not going to make it, considering Gaga Slanina is probably going to be there as well. So seeing one of them in the third goalkeeper spot would be fun. I would like to see them hopefully get involved more so going forward, but I get wanting to bring in the veteran guy who's been in the system and knows what's going on for Copa versus the guy that's never been involved at all before.
Like I said, Chris Brady is a sketchy point. He hasn't been that good this year. Salentano's been hurt, so that kind of knocked him out too. But again, third goalkeeper. It's not that deep.
Yeah.
Somebody who continues to be the USMNT scapegoat, Miles Robinson. Your thoughts?
Were there people actually crying about Miles Robinson being in there?
Enough of them, yeah.
Of course there was. That's just idiotic. I mean, I don't know how many times Miles Robinson needs to have a good performance in the USMNT for people to stop complaining. Like, people are just completely glossing over the fact that he has been very, very good for the USMNT. And they're solely just looking at the fact that his name is tagged with an MLS team. And then they are up in arms and they're super upset. And they'd rather see Austin Trusty in there, who's conceded 100 goals this season. I mean, maybe not him personally. I highly doubt he's played every single game for Sheffield, but he was part of a Sheffield team that conceded 100 goals in the Premier League. I believe before the show started, you had said that they like conceded the most goals in like history or something like that along those lines. Like,
yeah, and it wasn't close.
An abysmal season. I don't think you should just get thrown in because you're playing in the Premier League. Because I would barely call what Sheffield did playing in the Premier League. It was more like just losing in the Premier League. So I'm very happy Miles Robinson is in there. He's experienced. He knows the system. He plays very well in the system. And he's been playing well for Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati last year was one of the best defensive teams in the league, although he wasn't there last year. He was with Atlanta. But they're continuing it again this year. They're, again, one of the best defensive teams in the league. And Miles Robinson certainly is a part of that. So happy to see him in here, and the people crying about it can go kick rocks.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google on Twitter of Miles Robinson, and it's exactly what you would expect. Yeah, Trusty is younger and has more upside.
What is he, younger by a year?
Yeah, Miles Robinson is a new Aaron Long.
That's not even close to true.
Yeah, Aaron Long clears. You're right.
Shut up.
No, so here's the thing, right? I don't care how much, like you hit a lot of good points, right? Anytime, can you imagine if he moved to what club was looking at him this off season in some championship team?
It could have been.
Was it PSV? Was it a Dutch team? Either way,
it might have been PSV.
Yeah, can you imagine if he was riding the bench at PSV and he got called in?
Nobody would say anything.
Not a peep, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care how much slack that he gets. I think you put it really well. He performs well. He's a good enough player when we call him in and he's asked to do his job. When you look at the Nations League and he played, everybody gave him slack. But if you look at the goals that were conceded, none of them were his fault, to my knowledge. The Jamaica goal, everybody falls asleep except him. He's the only one marking, right? I don't think he's our top two at the moment, by the way. Like, I don't think he should be starting. But he's fine on the bench. He's fine if we need to close games out and put him in. But I do need to like I said, I need to emphasize it. Enough with the Austin. Austin Trusty is the new John Brooks. Like, dude is not when John Brooks was getting these shouts after literally not playing more than 90 minutes in a year, just because he was in Europe. This is the same vibe. Austin Trusty is a starting center back on the worst Premier League defense in history. I don't care that it's the Prem. I loved your point. You wouldn't call it playing in the Prem. They just existed and lost and got killed and got beat.
Badly, too. Like, they almost set the worst points record. It's 16 points in the whole season. That's crazy.
That level of play doesn't deserve a call up.
Even right? FCC at their worst had more than 16 points in a season.
Yeah. So, and the reason it doesn't deserve a call up is because we aren't in a position where there aren't four center backs better than him right now.
Mm-hmm.
CCV is doing well in Scotland. Now, granted, Scotland is MLS with two teams that are good, right? But he does well for one of those two teams. Mackenzie has done so well with Genk, and I'm really excited to see him here. I think it's a well-deserved call-up. Genk's in the playoff spot with 42. He's made 42 appearances, got them into a playoff spot in Belgium. Now, Belgium also not the highest level, but still good enough. Tim Ream brings that veteran leadership that you're looking for. You knew he was always gonna come in. Chris Richards, flexible and successful for a maybe an overachieving Palace side. I mean, you could argue that, but still, played well in multiple
Top
positions.
team, top 10 Premier League team. And he was, I feel like, consistently playing towards the end.
Oh yeah, no, and he played as a six. He played outside. He played at the inside. He played
Yeah,
all over the
a good
place.
season for
Yeah,
sure. Like, I think your point is spot on in that maybe if we were really desperate for center backs, you could make the argument that Trusty could be here just based on the merit that he's playing in the Premier League. But the fact of the matter is that that is a super deep position for us. And we have guys that are playing very well at that position that definitely deserve call ups over a guy who made 32 appearances this year, 28 starts, and had one clean sheet. So yeah, I don't think there shouldn't be a question there. And I'm on board with you as well. I don't think Miles is our starter. I'd probably go with like it might be flexible. I think Tim Ream's definitely one of the starting center backs. I'd definitely be on board for Chris Richards being the other one with him, but I'm flexible there as well. I think you could really go anybody with Tim Ream and you're probably safe. I think we have a
I think against the likes of Colombia and Brazil with that speed and that pace, and Tim Ream has kind of fallen out of favor. You're probably looking at somebody like CCV and Richards, right? That's probably a more CCV deals with stuff in the air. Richards covers everything behind him, whatever. But if you're arguing over who should be center back five, MLS center back who has been very solid over the last 5-6 seasons, really outside of his injury, or center back for the worst defensive team in the Premier League, you know exactly who I'm calling for my fifth center back.
Mhm.
I mean, it's again, it's we're arguing over things that are so minute in their influence. Like
Yeah.
this isn't 2014 where you're looking to get people who are on the bench of European sides and oh, we need them maybe to play significant minutes because everybody else. No, we're in a good spot. We don't need to bring in players like that.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say this is probably the best I've felt about our center back situation in a while. Because like I know we had good prospects coming in, but I feel like a lot of these guys are coming in really good form right now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're in such a great position as a nation where we don't have to worry about like, oh, we've got 11 starters and then oh, who's next, right? Like we don't have to rely on players like Julian Green anymore coming in with zero experience at the club level, zero experience at the national team level, and hope because he's a young guy in Europe who chose America that he's gonna make a difference, right? We're in a good spot. That being said, let's move on and talk about the right back selection of Shaq Moore.
Oh, is that my cue to start things off
You're
on the
always starting
discussion?
these off like this isn't.
Well,
You've done it for the
I didn't know
last
if you
two.
had more. I didn't know if you had more to add on to it. I appreciate the less words there. Just wasn't ready. Um, yeah, I mean, this is so I know I don't want to jump the gun, but obviously, like Shaq Moore, Sean Johnson, and Tim Tillman were the three that I saw people complaining about the most. This is the one where I feel like people, and I still think people are overblowing it, but this is the one where I kind of understand it the most because right back's very thin right now with Dest out because we're looking at Scally and Shaq Moore as like true right backs. I know there's some flexibility that we can come with because I believe Wayo is being played as a right back for a bit, so he may be able to do it. I don't know how much I really love Tim Weah being in a four back right back, but there is some flexibility there. I don't think something like that would happen. I can't imagine Greg would go with that, like experiment with it for the first time in Copa America. But if something were to happen to Scally, Shaq Moore's the next man up. So I think there's somewhat of a chance that he gets game time, especially if Scally goes down. I think he's the probably locked in starter for the right back spot. And I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm not a big Shaq Moore fan. I think he's been like Nashville's been struggling a lot this season. And I don't necessarily think it's the defense, but they also haven't been great defensively. They've conceded 20 in 14 games. So I think there were probably better options here at the backup right back spot. So I'm not a huge fan of them bringing in Shaq Moore, but at the end of the day, if Scally stays healthy, you're getting like maybe less than 25 minutes total in all of Copa America for Shaq Moore. So I don't think it's something to completely lose your head over, but I still think there could have been me personally, I would have preferred probably somebody else instead of Shaq Moore.
I agree with you. This one I get. Like I can understand the disappointment here because he's not been very good for Nashville, right? Nashville hasn't been good on their own, and he individually. And I was just editing a video when we were talking about the Nashville coaching changes, where we like specifically mentioned Shaq Moore as being okay, but not a standout guy. That isn't quality enough anymore to get into the national team. So I found it funny, like the week before this comes out, we were already saying like Shaq Moore isn't that good, and here he goes, he gets added. This is a familiarity pick, right? Familiarity pick and nothing more. See what I did there?
Oh,
Yeah.
you
I had one set up for Miles too, but I skipped over it.
miles ahead of the next guy.
Yeah, he's not miles
Miles ahead
worse
of
than anybody
Trusty.
else. Yeah. Serginho Dest is hurt. If Serginho Dest is not hurt, Shaq Moore is not here.
Mhm.
Period. So we're really arguing who's number 2 and who's number 3 on this depth chart. Is Shaq Moore number 3? Probably not. Joe Scally has been unimpressive at his best with USMNT. And then you have a host of players who haven't been used as much. Brian Reynolds, who's likely going to be with the Olympic team. Reggie Cannon, who hasn't been in the team much since about 2022. For whatever reason, I don't know. He's not getting consistent time at QPR, but he hasn't really impressed in that time. More getting in over somebody like Brooks Lennon or DeJuan Jones, that's rough, right? Because I think they provide different abilities, but he's a better defender than them both, right? Those two both give great attacking outputs, but their defensive work leaves a little bit to be desired, where Moore maybe is the opposite, right? But I get it. Push comes to shove, you have to choose one right back, or you have one right back on the team right now. You have to pick another. Are you going to pick somebody who you don't know how they're doing, who they don't give you because in this system you don't really need super attacking right backs that are just going to serve crosses in play, right? We see that Weah fills that space a lot. Even when Dest is there, he's not serving crosses. He's cutting in and taking shots with the left foot, which neither Jones or Lennon do often. They're more service from the outside. So you're going to pick somebody that doesn't really fit your system just because they have a better pedigree? Or are you going to go with somebody who you understand the way that this person plays, you understand what is expected out of them, and if something happens, you go to them? That's obviously going to be the coach's choices, is familiarity versus unproven things, right? Should there have been more experimentation in January camp in, these other friendlies? Absolutely, to figure out in this scenario, what should we do? 100%. We didn't do that. So this is where we're at. Is it a knock? Probably. That's something on Greg and the team, no doubt. That one you can be upset with. But there's also this idea of playing somebody out of position, right? They've already mentioned Tim Weah and Weston can play as right backs, and Weah specifically because he's done that as a wing back in Italy. And then even center backs like Richards or Tim Ream. Tim Ream, very, very unlikely, but Chris Richards can play out in those roles. There's so many options to play if Joe Scally is either hurt or not doing the job. I don't expect to see much of Shaq Moore at all.
Yeah, I hate that everything you said makes sense, but um yeah, because there's just like there's right back names that come to my mind that I like better, but I think they're almost more attacking minded,
Oh yeah,
or they just don't really have experience with the team, and I'm gonna stick true to what I said for Sean Johnson. Like I think you go with the experience in this case for Copa. I don't think this is the time where you experiment. So I would imagine it was a similar way of thinking when going with Shaq Moore as opposed to someone like Aaron Herrera. That was one of the names that came to my head. I would love to see him get more involved in the team, especially because he's had a strong year this year. But I don't think this is the time where you bring him in all of a sudden and test him out, because who knows, it could look bad. And then, he takes time to kind of get used to things and the way they play and how to play with everybody. So I think Shaq Moore from that regard makes more sense. I'm a bit surprised DeAndre Yedlin didn't get the call instead of Shaq Moore, unless
also true.
it could have been because of the way you're thinking, where I would think Yedlin's more of an attacking right back option, whereas Moore is probably more defensive. And so maybe they didn't want to go with Yedlin in that case. But I think Yedlin's had the better season. He's played more. Shaq Moore's only started 6 games this year. He's only played in 9. Yedlin's got 11 starts and 13, but I know he is playing as a wing back. in the back five for FCC, which obviously the US is not playing in. But I mean, Yedlin's got the experience, just like Shaq Moore does. And I think he's in better form. So I'm a bit surprised to see him not there. I'd probably prefer Yedlin over Shaq Moore in this case. But at the end of the day, it's a backup right back spot. Hopefully nothing happens to Joe Scally, and hopefully he can play better than he has in the past. And we don't even have to worry about any of this discussion.
Well, and here's the thing too, before we move on to our last player here is if you're going to do this experimentation where you're going to look for somebody who's maybe a bit more attacking, more as a wing back, you're going to do it with players who have been in the team and shown that they can do that, right? So Tim Weah has done that for his Italian side consistently. Like that is his role. So if you're going to go and switch to a three in the back and use wing backs like Anthony Robinson and Tim and whoever's going to be in that wing back spot, you're going to put Tim Weah there over Shaq Moore. If you're going to go and look as a more defensive role, maybe Tim Weah is not that guy, but you've got other Weston McKinney playing right back. We've seen he's used center mids at outside back all the time. Our Lord and Savior Kellen Acosta has played outside back more times than he probably wants to. But,
what a shame. Should have been on this roster, just in case.
Well, and here's the other thing, too. Tyler Adams has experience as a right back. He did that for Red Bull when he started, right? You could put him out there. There's so many other options that are better than Shaq Moore that I don't worry about this, right? And again, we could come back to this in a month and a half, and Shaq Moore is starting every game, and Sean Johnson is starting every game, and now we'll look stupid, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I listened for the Euro snobs. If that does happen, just know that it's probably going to end up being a good thing, because if Greg flops at Copa America, maybe there's a stronger chance he's out before the World Cup. So you gotta look for the bright side and things.
No, there's no bright side. It's Twitter. There's only darkness. Darkness and evil.
That's fair.
Let's go to the final player here, and that is Tim Tillman, who I have nicknamed the MLS scapegoat of the month. And I'll let you give your thoughts.
Listen, I mean, it's clear as day that if Tim Tillman is getting on the field, it's even a worse situation than if Sean Johnson's getting on the field. Like something like all of the midfielders must have been on some bus, and the bus must have broken down somewhere and they can't get to the game, because if that's the reason that's like the only reason Tim Tillman will probably be getting any game time, because there are just so many other midfielders ahead of him in the list, like Tyler Adams, Johnny, Luca De La Torre, Weston, Musa, Malik Tillman. Like that's 6 players that are ahead of him. We don't play a midfield where we're having like 4 or 5 midfielders out there. It's usually like 2 or 3. So for Tillman to get out there as the 7th midfielder in that group would be insane. He's not going to get any game time. So people losing their minds over Tim Tillman being on the team is just so overblown and over exaggerated. And people need to relax and let hopefully some more promising guys go play in the Olympics and get some more experience actually playing. It's not like Tim Tillman hasn't had a good season. He's had a good season for LAFC this year. He's got 4 goals, 2 assists already. Pretty high like ratings as well. Like he's done well. It's really not that big of a deal for him to be included on this team.
So Tim Tillman, I'm looking here at our lovely whoscored.com, is the 8th highest rated player in MLS this year overall, just on match performance averages. Only players ahead of him: Thiago Palmada, Federico Bernardeschi, Evander, Chicho Aranjo, Lucia Costa, Benteke, and some dude named Misai. Everybody, he's better than again, ratings are what they are, right? But people are making it out like Tim Tillman just is
blackmailed his way into the team.
Yeah, like he's only there because his brother's there, and he's only there because they're making it act like he hasn't played a minute in MLS and he's just like brought along for the ride. He's been solid this year. Like I didn't look at that and be like, oh, Tim Tillman, great, but it didn't shock me because he's done well. Now, and we're going to get into this in a second, but a reminder that 27 players can't go to 26 spots. Somebody is going home. Tillman is my guess, just due to the depth of the position and how many players are there. Unless he jumps in and balls out against Colombia and Brazil, which, again, I don't see happening. I think he's probably just there as the extra player to say, okay, he's had a good year in MLS. He's done things better than he did last year. Let's see what he can do with the camp, and maybe you never know, right?
I'm looking at the roster. I almost think maybe they send a striker out in that spot because they got 4 strikers on there right now.
You could do that too. And that's where I was going to dive in a second here, where people were calling for Leonard Maloney to take this spot. Leonard Maloney should be there. He's gotten his promoted side to 8th place in the Bundesliga. Very impressive. Like, don't get me wrong, very impressive that he was able to do that. But they play 2 different positions. One is a pure 6, that'd be Leonard Maloney. Is a ball destroyer, is a destroyer, a ball winner, and a quick distributor. Whereas Tim Tillman's more of an 8-10. He's more of an attacking output, right? If you look at the midfield group, you've got Adams and Cardoso as your pure number 6s. Weston McKennie and Luca De La Torre, more of your 6-8s, your kind of progressing the ball after you won it. That would mean you'd have a 5th number 6. And then as you go forward, you've got Malik Tillman, who has not shown well with the men's national team, by the way. He's done well for Celtic or for PSV, but not shown well for the men's national team to this point. Yunus Musa, who has played on both sides. He's been advanced, but he's also been deep, so he might be in that role already. Reyna, and then Aaronson, who can play inside. Maybe you can put Pulisic in there, but that's unlikely. So you're looking at a role that's either 6 heavy on the number 6s with 3 in the attacking role, or if you want to say Musa's going to go more advanced, it'll be 5 and 4. You need more help in the attack than you do with the defense in this group. So Tillman makes sense over Maloney here from that standpoint. I'm not saying Maloney's bad and doesn't deserve to be here, right? I think he probably would have done well. And if something happens to one of the 6s between now and then where, Tyler Adams has a setback, gosh forbid, right? And his injury, keeps him out for these friendlies, Maloney's the easy switch. But if you're looking at the group that they picked and you're looking to balance out what you have, especially if you're now considering maybe we're doing a little bit more rotation where Tim Weah might be dropping in as a right back, or Weston McKennie might be dropping, or Tyler Adams might be dropping as a right back. So we're going to drop Yunus Musa back. You're going to need more help and more depth in the attacking roles. Again, we're set at the 6 and the 6-8. With the only thing I think Tim Tillman's been brought for is if they're going to start experimenting and they just need cover at one of the other attacking roles. I don't expect him to be at Copa America, but I'm not pissed off that he's here.
People are complaining about a spot in the team where whether it's Maloney or Tillman, neither one is playing. Even if they make the Copa roster, neither one is seeing a minute on the field. So why are we up in arms about the 7th person on the midfield depth chart? People need to relax and cool it.
Correct. And that's kind of where I'm just again, if Tim Tillman was doing this in the 2nd Bundesliga and he got called up, nobody says a word. I do want to talk about some additions that weren't complained about because they probably should be. Everybody's screaming about MLS bias and whatever. Brenden Aaronson played just over 1,200 minutes, had 2 goals, 2 assists, and survived a drop in the Bundesliga on goal differential. That isn't insanely impressive to me, right? You have players who had better years than him, regardless of where they were playing, right? If you were going to make the roster based on the ability of the player, right, which seems like the Tillman move to me, Zendejas has had a better year than him. And I know he's been poor for men's national team, but he's had a better year. Jesus Ferreira's had a better year than him. Even Taylor Booth is having a better year than him. And I get he's going to Paris probably, but the outrage is to the not to the wrong people, but it's not spread wide enough. I don't think Brenden Aaronson has done enough to just instantly been given a call up here. Now I get that he gives different attributes, right? He presses well. He's a nonstop force off the bench, right? But you have other players who can do that. I don't know if Brenden Aaronson deserves to be here.
Yeah, no, I mean that's valid criticism. He's had a very rough year on a team that struggled a lot this season, and I don't think people give the same level of criticism towards him as they would somebody else. with an MLS tag. Like Miles Robinson, for example, consistently good for the team, consistently good for his club team, but he still gets criticism. But Aaronson not doing well with the club team, not really playing much with the national team, kind of skates by because he's playing in Europe. And I'm not really complaining about him being included because I don't have this like huge list of names of people that I think would be like super upgrades over bringing them in instead of Aaronson. So I'm not too concerned about that, especially because Brenden has so much familiarity with the system. But I just think if people are going to criticize players for, I guess, their performances in the club team, then I think it's probably only fair that the same criticism is applied to the players that play in Europe. So I'm on board with you there, but at the end of the day, I don't really have an issue with him being here because like we talked about before, like I think he's in a similar situation to Tim Tillman. I mean, I do think he gets some game time because he can press hard at the end of a game and try to put some pressure on tired legs, but he's not going to be a starter. And I think he's pretty far behind being a starter in this team.
No, and for sure, and that's kind of why I'm not like up in arms about it. Again, he gives you positive parts of his game, but again, if you're gonna be upset about the four MLS players, like because of their performance, like Brenden Aaronson didn't perform well, and here's the thing, he didn't perform to a level where his loan wanted to be extended, or that his team that he's coming back to loan for wants to keep him. So at that point now he's unwanted at two different teams he's tried to play for. I wouldn't be shocked if he comes back to MLS at some point, right? But the second he walks back into MLS locker room, if he gets called up again, it's the world's over.
Yeah, even if he comes back here and starts torching it up and revitalizes his career, like you said, that's it. He's in the criticism books until he's back in Europe again.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm done with the negative. Should we go a little bit of a positive?
Yeah, definitely.
Who are some positive inclusions for you? Who are you happy to see here that maybe we haven't seen in a little bit?
So I'm not gonna I'm just gonna mention the name because I want to let you have your time to share your praise because I know you're big on this guy, but Mark McKenzie is definitely exciting to see him back in here. I know he had that dreadful stint in the Nations League, and I think that's stuck with people's mind way too long because he's been so good in Belgium. But I won't dive into that too much. I'll let you take that one because I know that one's for you. But I am excited to see Josh Sargent in here, and the reason I'm going to mention him is because I feel like it feels so much more justified for him to be in here this time as opposed to like his time when Norwich was in the Premier League and people were still talking about him being like one of the first names in the USMNT roster sheet, despite the fact that he had like 3 goal contributions for the entire season, which for an attacking player is just not the level that you want to see, especially with how deep the USMNT pool is. But this time around, he's absolutely 100% earned it. Playing in the championship, 16 goals in 24 starts and 26 appearances. That is a phenomenal return. Ever since Norwich has dropped to the championship, he has been playing so much better. And I'm happy to see him back in the team and getting in the mix again because he has 100% deserved it. And we know the striker pool has been so hit or miss with the USMNT. Even when Balogun has come in, it still has felt a little bit hit or miss at the striker spot. So the more strikers we have in good form coming in, I think the better. So I'm super happy to see him playing well and back in the roster.
Yeah, 100%. Right. Big excitement for Josh Sargent. He has been inching ever closer to that what if group of attackers, right? With all the injuries that he's had, every time he gets hot, he gets hurt, and I don't want to see him join that imagine he stayed healthy group that we talk about a lot on our history episodes and stuff, right? He had
Yeah.
another great year in the championship. You mentioned his stats, and we'll see what he can do to his national team, right? I think one of the issues with him was he was playing on the wing for Norwich, wasn't producing well, and then had to adjust to being a number nine. Well, now he's going to get a chance to be an out and out number nine after playing as an out and out number nine. He's been solid.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mark McKenzie. Very excited to see him as well. You mentioned the howler in the Nations League, but As again, he's steadied himself, got into a really good rhythm, earned this opportunity, properly earned it, I believe. The trust that he's gained at Genk is a massive boost for his confidence, and I think that will show nicely here. I'm excited to see what he can bring. And finally, Tyler Adams coming back. I know he's been on minutes restriction, and he's been limited with Bournemouth, but again, I'm excited just to see him play again. It's always nice watching him play. He brings such a good energy to the group, and I'm real excited for just to see him back, even if it is for 45 minutes here and there against some of these teams, because he has that again the attitude and the energy he brings resonates with the group, right? Everybody else really expected. I think this is your best group, minus the bottom four, which you could, switch out with a whole bunch of people. But for the most part, this is going to be your best 20 that you're going to bring. So I'm pretty happy with the thing. You can't really complain too much about it. I don't know if I ever got. Who do you are you? You mentioned that you were thinking about maybe a striker goes home. Who do you think that is?
That's a tough call. I think Balogun, there's probably no way, shape, or form he's getting sent home. I think he's probably locked in 100% at that striker spot. And I feel like the door's kind of opened for Pepe, Sargent, or Haji. Maybe all four of them end up staying if Greg decides he wants to try to play some of them on the wing, because I believe Haji has a little experience with it and Sargent does. I don't love Sargent on the wing. I haven't seen much of Haji on the wing, so I don't know what that looks like. So I hope that's not the case. Like, I'd rather Sargent play as a striker. So I would say it's probably between Pepe, Sargent, and Haji. I would think I think Pepe's probably got the best odds out of those three to stay. So I think it's probably between Haji and Sargent. So maybe it just depends on who plays better in the friendlies. It might be a little bit tough, but I'm not saying 100% that's the position that will get the chop, but considering there's four strikers on there, if he's going to play all of them as a nine, I don't think we would need four of them. I think you probably are fine with three.
See, I don't know. I think Pepe is probably the guy to go of all of them. Sargent's numbers we just listed were great. Haji's pretty much mirrored those with Coventry, and Pepe 7 goals in 27 games. Just in terms of production, right? I think you're looking at him being on the chopping block of the four. But it'll be interesting to see. I'm really interested to see how that goes. But yeah, I think overall, I think it's Tillman, no doubt, would be the first one. And then after that, I think maybe Pepe would be the guy.
I don't know. I think Pepe's just kind of been hard done by the situation. Like, he has 27 appearances, but he only has 484 minutes played, which I know could be a criticism in itself, in that he just
Yeah.
hasn't played a ton. But he has 7 goals in 484 appearances. That's insane. That's a he's scoring 1.3 goals per 90. That's an insane return. Like, he has crushed it. And PSV has been unbelievably good this season. He's been I almost think it's actually a benefit that he's been so good off the bench, because I would think that's most likely his role if he is called into USMNT. So his experience in that regard and his ability to do so at the club level, I think, is almost a plus to keep him on the roster as a guy that has to come off the bench. Because I think Balogun's your starter. Like, even if he's had not the greatest season, he's probably your starter. And so I think Pepe off the bench, showing that he could do so very successfully at PSV, I think that's a benefit.
Interesting. I can get behind that. But we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. Let's talk about the friendlies then. We got Colombia, we got Brazil. They're going to be tough. Very, very tough tests. And this is the stuff that we need to be going up against, in my opinion, not the Omans and the Uzbekistans. This is the group that we need to see. These are the teams we need to see the group up against, right? Because this is what we're going to get in the Copa America. This is what we're going to get if we go far in our own World Cup. These are the teams we need to know how we stack up against. I'm going to be interested to see how Greg lines up against them. We talked about maybe the formation changes and the shifts and what have you. But playing against a group as strong as this is going to have its challenges. And I think we're going to struggle these next two games. Greg's tactics, as we've spoken about, are poor, especially in the attack. And against teams like this, you can't just take attacking plays and be like, oh, we'll get back the next one. You have to take advantage of your chances. And if you don't, the more chances you create, the better off you'll be. But we don't create a lot of them. And Colombia and Brazil, they create a lot of them. So we're already looking up the hill here.
Yeah, no, these are perfect friendlies for what we should be striving for, especially going right into Copa America. Like if you're going to make a deep run, there's a very decent chance you're coming up against a Brazil or a Colombia because those are going to be tough competitive teams in this tournament. I mean, we already have Uruguay in the group, right? So that's going to be similar level of competition that we're going to have to go up against. And I completely agree. Like this is the level that we need to be playing against because we have struggled against it in the past. It's the level of play where we got stopped at in the last World Cup. We came up against the Netherlands and we weren't able to get past it. Like as much as our group was tough, I think there is a difference in level between Iran, Wales versus like Netherlands, England.
Right.
So we need to be able to compete with the that next level of the Netherlands and the Englands and Brazils and Argentina's if we want to make deep runs in these tournaments. And I think historically we have struggled to be competitive at that level with Greg in charge. So it'll definitely be a good test for tactics and playing around with things and seeing what works, what doesn't, who works in certain positions and who doesn't work in certain positions. I just hope he doesn't run with the same stuff that he normally runs with, that doesn't experiment at all. I'd like to see him try things out because whatever he's been doing in the past has not been working. So we need to try something different. It's not like we have this completely new crop of players coming in. It's the same players who are very talented and have the ability to compete with these top teams. But I just think we're not getting there tactically. So I hope he takes this opportunity to experiment and try some new things out.
Yeah, and he's going to have some tough teams to go about it, right? So Colombia boasting tough opponents like former MLS stars Yerson Mosquera, Santiago Arias, and John Duran, as well as including a couple of flops on Merseyside like Puis Piaz and some goats of Merseyside like James Rodriguez. The real ones, remember. Brazil, on the other hand, are taking a younger approach. You know, they've left the likes of Neymar and Ederson and Richarlison home for Endrick, Bento, Andreas Pereira. I mean, definitely different looks, and they're going to have their own challenges to work that out themselves. But these are going to be two heavy defensive layouts, I think, for the men's national team. They're going to be learning to defend against and absorb a lot of pressure for when we see these guys later in the Copa America, hopefully. But if I had to predict, I think getting a win against any of them is going to be tough. That's just my gut feeling right now.
I'm honestly fine with them if they do lose or draw these games, but at least Greg's trying new things out. If he's just running the same old tactics and formations and not really changing anything, and we still lose and draw, then I'd be disappointed. Maybe I would be less disappointed with a draw against Brazil, but
Yeah.
considering the roster that you had mentioned, I can't imagine that's I would imagine they're probably just like testing out who's going to be the fringe guys on the Brazil team. I would imagine you're probably seeing a stronger roster for the actual Copa America. I want to see him experiment. If he's not experimenting and we're still losing, I'm going to be sorely disappointed. And it's just going to feel like a waste of time.
It's going to be the performance, right? It's going to be about, do we look good or do we look like crap? If we are like the result, you're right. The results aside, whatever, right? But if we show up and we look like garbage, like we don't have the ball, we're not counterattacking well, we have zero shots, we're not scoring, we're just getting pummeled. That's the red flag to me, right? If we lose the game 2-1, but we had lots of chances and we were competing well and it just didn't go our way on the day, okay. If we are just getting our butts handed to us, problem.
Yep, I agree.
All right, why don't we wrap up with some U.S. Open Cup as we wrap up the tournament itself? It was announced on Thursday that the last three rounds of the U.S. Open Cup are being streamed on Apple TV's MLS Season Pass, free of charge for all to watch as it gets into the later rounds. A competition that saw at most 8,000 people tune in for a YouTube live stream in the previous round is now going to be free to watch for over 25 million Apple TV users worldwide. And of course, because Apple TV is affiliated with MLS, there are enough individuals on the internet finding ways to spin this as a bad thing, because of course they are. 5 months ago, the complaint was that the broadcast deal was not good. MLS dropped the ball when they were in charge, and now they're trying to kill the tournament. Now, U.S. Soccer has come in and chosen the global broadcasting deal that MLS has. They've picked it up for free all over the world, no charge to watch it. and we need to be upset because MLS is now trying to control all of soccer instead of kill the whole thing. It's just exhausting, right? Going through this loop to loop narrative with the anti MLS crowd is exhausting because nothing can be good. And this isn't like us trying to be like, oh, like forget all of the bad stuff that MLS did to the cup. Like, no, obviously that is still a problem, but you can be upset with what they've done and still recognize that this is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it in a similar way of Messi coming to MLS. It's getting people's eyes on stuff that they normally wouldn't watch. So a lot of people might be subscribed to the MLS season pass or the Apple subscription because they follow MLS and they don't really follow USL. They may not be really familiar with it and the teams and the players and whatnot. They can now see like, oh, like this is free and available. I've got some time. Let me go check out the game. They go watch the game. They're watching like Sac Republic play. I forget who they're playing against, but I know they're in the quarterfinal matchups. They go watch Sac Republic looks really good. There's some exciting players out there. Now all of a sudden you've got some guys to follow. It's the same thing as like I know you've mentioned this on past episodes. It's like the people who followed Messi to watch MLS because Messi is there have now started to look into players that have been performing well. I know you mentioned, I remember specifically you mentioned someone who was I think a Barcelona fan, followed Messi over to MLS and was like, hey, this Hani Mukhtar guy is really cool. Like he's a good player. I can see the exact same thing happening here. It's more eyes on the cup. I can't see why it's a bad thing. I think people are just complaining because it has the MLS name on it.
Right. And I think, the first thing that was coming back is like, oh, well, why are they getting, rewarded for doing nothing for 20 years to promote it and then trying to pull out from it? And now they're getting all the eyes on MLS season pass. They're not making money off of it, first of all, because it's free to, they're not making you buy MLS season pass to do it. All it is a place for it to be there. People were talking about Apple TV to be the producer of the thing anyway. This is probably just a test run to see if it's worth it, right? No one disagrees that MLS didn't do enough when they were in charge of marketing. Like that's always the first thing that comes back is like, oh, well, people don't watch the cup because it's MLS's fault because they were in charge of marketing it and they never did it correct. Like that is a fact. Nobody's disagreeing with that. Nobody's disagreeing that them pulling their teams and trying to hide behind this shady idea of like schedule congestion isn't garbage. Like we've said that multiple times. Like that is a garbage excuse. We understand it was for money and exposure and whatever. You can still be upset with all of that and recognize that this is a good thing. And the fact that the tournament that is claimed to be loved by everybody and more important than anything else in the country for the soccer state, and I'm using you loosely, right? It's now on a major broadcaster being shown for free in front of millions of people, whether they've subscribed to MLS Season Pass or not. That was always the end goal, right? You talk about like, oh, well, CBS Sports Galazzo like had it, and CBS Sports Galazzo had it for 2 years and never got it out to enough people. It was too hard to find and nobody could figure it out. Apple TV has it in one place every single time. It helps bring exposure to the 3 championship teams left, the MLS sides that are participating in it. And again, it might open the door for an MLS return in the future, right? MLS was complaining because they had to put their teams through, again, I forget what the actual like phrasing was, but some garbage excuse like, oh, we weren't happy with the production quality or whatever. Well, now they've got the production quality. Does that mean that they come back? We'll see. But all of the things that were such big issues 4 months ago, people were like boycotting other tournaments. Don't go to Leagues Cup, cancel your season tickets, don't do anything because of US Open Cup, right? Now we've found a way to fix it, and it could be very positive for the future, but we have to see it as a negative because MLS adjacent, right? Have a day off. It's okay to be upset at MLS and recognize this is still a good thing, right? Because if anybody else picks it up, Paramount or whatever, they're going to charge you for it. You gotta have Paramount Plus to watch, US Open Cup last 3 rounds. If I don't even know any other streaming services that do this. Peacock picked it up. Yeah. Peacock would have made you buy it too. Right? Like,
yeah.
It is a free to use service to get it in front of millions of eyeballs. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Not to mention, like you mentioned before with CBS Sports Galazzo, when they had it, that was a different streaming service than what was MLS was being shown on versus here, like Apple is what people who follow MLS watch every week. They know exactly where to find it, how to find it. It's going to be very easy for them to access if they're interested in watching. You don't have to go download an extra app. You don't have to go to like some new website and click around and try to find it, because I feel like in the past, finding US Open Cup streams, even this late into the tournament, was difficult. And it just couldn't be any easier. And now you can get new eyes on lower league teams and potentially even get new fans, new people following.
Like, it's got millions of people watching it. Not every one of those 40 million is going to tune into the cup, right? Enough people will to make it better than the YouTube streams of 8,000 people watching it with the 2,000 people in the stands, right? Like, it is a better layout. That's not absolving MLS for anything that they've done, right? That does not give them a free pass. So we mentioned before that it may just invite MLS back to the table. And that's not saying that they get all of their past things wiped. Like, that's still a bad stain on them, right? But if it brings it back to the table, it makes the cup better. And if it brings it back to the table, that means that you're probably going to get more time streaming with it. The real reason they left, money and broadcasting, right? We've been through that. Apple is state-of-the-art broadcasting, and they can definitely find the money to make it worth MLS's while to broadcast this thing. They can probably kick more money into the prize pool to make people care about it more. There's so much more that they can do with this because they're invested with MLS. I think the theory that's going around that made the most sense was that Apple TV would kick in whenever MLS enters properly, right? Round of 32, I think that was the last round, is when it would kick in, which would be a massive improvement to what it is now, where if they didn't step in before, I think CBS Sports Golazo did the same thing last year, where they're like, oh, we'll stream the last 3 rounds or 2 rounds on our and I forget what they call, like CBS Sports Golazo, like Plus or whatever. But the idea that if you keep them around, it's a massive improvement, right? It is getting from 8,000 people on a YouTube stream to potentially millions of people, which is way better than it was before, because a lot of people have Apple TV. It's just a fact, right? And here's the thing: if you can find a way to keep MLS Next Pro sides in it and convince Apple that, because I believe that they show MLS Next Pro on Apple TV. So if you can convince Apple that, hey, your other league is participating from the first round, they can go ahead and stream that round, right? Now you've got every single round in front of millions of eyes, like ESPN Plus does for the FA Cup. It's better. It is a step forward, or at least it gives a brighter future to the step forward than what it was before. We were just watching it on YouTube, right? And I watched a lot of games, and they were good. They were fine. But this has better production quality. End of the day, the more people we put in front of the tournament, the better it is to find investors, show that we've, show the world what the lower league teams look like, the championship, the USL 1 sides, maybe even create people who want to invest in those clubs, whether it be to bring them up to MLS, raise them up to be the best in USL, whatever that looks like. Investment is good, right? But the bottom line, this is a good thing for US Open Cup. This is a good thing for US soccer, regardless of how badly MLS fumbled this. At the end of the day, we got it there. And here's the deal, right? We've seen this happen before, and we've covered it in our history series. This is what the North American Superliga did to the CONCACAF Champions League. MLS was in CONCACAF Champions League. They didn't like it. They thought it was low quality. Nobody cared about it enough. They went out, pulled their own tournament with Liga MX, the North American Superliga, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we should probably start putting the Champions League in because they're not giving us all the best teams or whatever. And now the Champions League becomes, again, not the top of the top, but it's still a good tournament, and everybody participates in it. Is it a dirty way to do it? Yeah. Did we come to the eventual good end conclusion? Yes. Do the ends justify the means? Arguable in philosophy school. I don't know.
I got nothing else to add on that. I think we covered it.
You're boring.
What? What else is there to say on it?
You let me go through that whole spiel. You don't even like back me up. You're just like, oh yeah, leave it out there. Let somebody go get him.
I already said before that I echoed the same sentiment that you have. Like, obviously it's a good thing, and I think people are just complaining because they want to complain about MLS.
This reeks of you weren't prepped for this and you're not ready to share ideas.
No, I mean, I knew about this. I saw the tweets come in. I think you had sent a couple as well. So I knew about it. I knew some people were upset over it, but I just kind of like swept it under the rug because at this point, anything that is tagged with anything related to MLS is going to have critics.
Whatever. Thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. What are we on? We're over 250 now. We're closing in on 3.
Yeah, it's 253.
Yeah, make sure you guys go subscribe wherever you get your podcast. You know, when our next one goes live, we're doing another MLS history segment on Wednesday. And then make sure you are following us on social media. That's Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, mainly, because we are sharing our clips and interacting with you guys, and we are closing in on some really good milestones. YouTube now up to 436 subscribers. Very cool. Twitter over 610 now. Are we at? Wait for it. Yeah, Twitter's at 615. So keep pushing us. We want to get to quad digits, man. These triple digits are boring these days. Keep going, subscribe, and hang out with us. I think TikTok's on 380. So keep pushing us up there and interacting with us. We love chatting with you guys and being a part of it. So share your thoughts with us as always, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players MLS podcast. See ya.